Greetings to all of my fellow humans who are struggling with life. Greetings to my fellow perfectionists. Greetings to my fellow people pleasers. Greetings to anyone who feels like they don't have a good work-life balance. Greetings to anyone who feels like life on its own is overwhelming enough and you don't even feel like you have a good balance in life. Greetings to all of my friends who are struggling with mental health. Greetings to anyone who struggles with feelings of low self-worth or poor self-confidence, poor body image. Greetings to you all. It has been a really long time since I have posted an episode as part of this podcast. When I initially set out to do this podcast, I really wanted to talk about something that I felt pretty confident in. As somebody who has struggled with perfectionism my whole life and used perfectionism as my predominant coping strategy, naming the podcast Perfectionists Anonymous and really focusing in on perfectionism-related content felt like the best move. And when I say best move, I mean it was the move that felt most within my comfort zone. I wanted to talk about something where I felt like I had a degree of expertise. I'm not a mental health professional, but I've lived perfectionism. I know what it feels like, and I wanted the podcast to feel like speaking with a friend, just your friend who struggles with the same things and is just debriefing with you over a cup of coffee, hanging out, having a girls' night, just talking about real things with you. And ironically, I felt like I could only have those conversations about perfectionism if the content that I was putting out there was perfect. It was coming out on a regular release schedule. All of the episodes I had fully scripted and written out so that I knew exactly what I was going to say. I had fully thought through what I was going to say. Every single thing that I wrote was worded in the most perfect way possible, meaning in my head that anyone who would hear it would be able to receive it and reflect upon it and resonate with it, and it would just work for everyone. I imagined the podcast would have perfect audio quality and I would never stumble over my words like I just did, and every sentence would be put together so beautifully. All of my words would be different. I would have this impressive vocabulary. Every episode would be fully researched and I would have all of these sources and resources and I would be able to cite everything. And so I look back on that now and I just think, wow, that was really perfectionistic of me. This whole podcast that I meant to set out with the intention of let's sit down and hang out as friends and just talk about shared experiences and talk about life. It doesn't need to be super complicated, and it's okay if it doesn't resonate with everyone, but the audience who wants to hear these kinds of things, wants this kind of space, will find it. Those intentions weren't matching up with what I was doing as part of the podcast. And I was also really limiting myself, I think, by saying that I was only qualified to talk about perfectionism, because life is so complicated, and as part of perfectionism, and even just not part of perfectionism, but just part of being a human, I struggle with so many other things: people pleasing, body image, all of the things that I mentioned in our greeting, and I know that other people do too. Life is hard and life is complicated, and I think if we're just hanging out chatting as friends, then I think that we're allowed to talk about other things too. I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome and feeling like I am not qualified to talk about the things that I want to talk about. But I know a lot of that is just rooted in my own insecurity too, that I'm just not good enough in general. Like, who would want to hear me talk? Who would want to sit down and hang out with me and talk about these difficult things? Who wants to hear about these things anyway? All of these feelings of self-doubt that are really preventing me from putting myself out there and making content, again, for the people who will resonate with it. And that's not going to be everyone, and it doesn't have to be everyone. But if I can help just one person feel like they have a safe space or a relaxing space or feel understood, then that is exactly what I want to do. That's what I initially set out to do with this kind of podcast and this kind of structure. It's also really funny to me that the last episode that I posted on this podcast before kind of taking a break was all about what to do when you're feeling overwhelmed, because clearly that was myself calling out to me for help, saying, hey, you're kind of feeling overwhelmed. And then I just kind of stopped posting episodes. And I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, I really appreciate the podcast. Are you planning on returning? Very kind, wonderful people. And it meant so much to hear those words, so much to hear people say that they were hoping to hear more things. And I responded with, yes, I do definitely want to return. I just need to figure out a structure that's going to work. And I think I figured out the structure. And the structure is that it doesn't need to be that structured. I try to make everything in my life so structured. I try to kind of control everything, have a schedule, have a plan, have everything so carefully thought out that I get to this place of paralysis. And that is a big component of perfectionism and anxiety, which is another very big struggle of mine. And so if I want to continue doing this kind of work, it's okay if it's unstructured. It doesn't need to be perfect. And it's okay to explore other topics, other ideas. I am kind of thinking of going through a little bit of a rebrand with this kind of podcast. Episodes won't release regularly, but episodes will release when I have something that I'm passionate about, that I really want to talk about, and I think that there is room to talk about it, and it's a good time to. Who knows where this will go in the future? That's another part of the perfectionism that has really held me back from this, is that I felt like I had to have a very clear vision of what this would look like 2 years from now, 5 years from now, what this podcast would look like. Would I even still be doing it? Would it lead to something else? And honestly, who cares? If it works right now, it works right now. And again, if it makes somebody feel safe, if it makes somebody feel understood anywhere out there on the internet, that is all that really matters. So I guess I just wanted to make today's episode to really talk about how I would like to keep making episodes again. And I think I am back and ready in a space to do that. And so if you're interested in that, I definitely recommend hitting the subscribe button, because that would be how you would know about some more sporadic uploads. You would get notified if you turn on the notification bell for those, since they won't be releasing on a consistent schedule. But part of the real meaning behind this is the concept that the work you put out there, the content you put out there, the lessons you put out there, the thoughts you put out there really do not need to be A+ work all the time. I can't remember who said it. If I could, I would quote them. But I remember being told once that the best remedy for perfectionism is to start being okay with B work. As somebody who went through high school, college, is currently a doctoral student, the idea of being okay with B work absolutely terrifies me. The idea of not putting 110% into whatever paper I'm writing, or whatever test I'm studying for, or whatever presentation I'm going to give, or whatever content I'm going to make, that terrifies me. And it terrifies me because I put these huge expectations on myself that anything less than perfection is not good enough. And so the idea of being okay with B work means that I would have to be okay with something being imperfect. That's a scary thought for a perfectionist. And I think that's something that shows up in life in so many different places. It doesn't even just have to be school related. I think a lot of us pressure ourselves to be perfect with maybe the food that we eat, or how we are, doing in our carbon footprint. Are we doing enough eco-friendly things? Are we reducing our carbon footprint enough? Are we doing A+ work in our parenting, in our job? Are we doing A+ work all the time? And the reality of the situation is that we just definitely don't. So with this podcast and with life, it's okay if some things are B work. It's okay if some things are C work. And honestly, with the amount of stressors that life has and the amount of responsibilities that we all have every single day, it is impossible for everything to be A+ work. I think it can help, especially if this idea is so terrifying to you that pulling back on anything feels too extreme to try and make anything B work. I think it can be helpful to think about the responsibilities that you have in life and what are the lowest stakes. What are the areas of life where you do really want to try and commit to still doing the A+ work? Because I understand as a perfectionist, some of that you want to keep doing the A+ work, and some of it you can. Some of it you're very capable of doing at that level. But what areas of your life can you back off a little bit in and do some B work, and you're still living your life to the fullest? It's not going to hurt anyone. It's not going to hurt you. It's just going to make things a little bit easier for you and reduce the expectations that you have for yourself to the point where maybe it's a little bit easier to give that A+ effort in that area of your life where you really do want to focus on. So that's kind of what I'm thinking with this podcast. I'm going to be okay with putting out content that isn't thought through 100% to the point where every punctuation mark is exactly right. I'm going to be content with just speaking to my microphone sometimes about things that are really on my mind. And if you're here for that, awesome. I'm really excited to sit down, hang out with all of my friends here, and relax. I want this to be a calming space. I want this to be a space where we can kind of question the expectations that we have for ourselves or the messages that we're constantly being bombarded with as we go about our daily lives, so that we can start to question, what do we really want out of life? What is going to be most fulfilling for us? What is necessary versus what is optional? Just a space where you can kind of decompress and hopefully works through some of those feelings or some of those thoughts in your head that are telling you you're not good enough. This isn't good enough. So if you're down for this little bit of unstructured kind of setting where we hang out and we talk about life just as friends, doesn't have to be perfect, then feel free to hit that subscribe button. Feel free to turn on notifications so that you know when I post a sporadic episode. Thank you so much for hanging out, still being here despite the really long hiatus. I am really appreciative for everyone who reached out and asked if the podcast would be returning. So yes, thank you. I am just really grateful for all of your support. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to hit that like button. Please let me know in the comments what you think about a more unstructured style for podcast episodes, any topics that you would love to see covered, because I am very open to talk about so many different things now. I really don't want to limit myself anymore. So please feel free to let me know in the comment section what kinds of topics you would love to hear covered. Let me know what you think about the more unstructured style. Let me know how you've been. And let me know if you too feel the pressure in life to make everything that you do A+ work, and what areas of your life you've been maybe trying to relax a little bit more. What areas of life are maybe a little bit easier to approach more of that B-level type work. Thank you all so much for listening today. I really appreciate you all, and I'm sending you all of the internet love.